I'm Eric Peterson, and today we're going to learn how to tie a square knot. So it might not make sense with all this camouflage, but I'm in the Navy. I've been in for about 7 years, and most of that time I've spent out at sea. So I can tell you from first-hand experience that if you're out at sea, things tend to shake. And if something's shaken loose and becomes dislodged, it's going to fall. And that has usually two outcomes in my experience. Either whatever falls breaks, which not good, or it's going to break a person. Neither of these outcomes is particularly desirable. So, being in the Navy, we want a way to be able to secure things very firmly and quickly. That's where knots come in. During the space race, both the US and the Soviet Union were trying to find a way to be able to write in space. The US spent a couple of $1 million designing a special pen that could counteract the forces of gravity and be able to write in space. The Soviet Union, guess what they did? You guessed it, they spent $2 on pencils. Now the moral of the story is sometimes it's better to work smarter, not harder. And sometimes the smarter option is also the cheaper option. That's where knots come in. So rope is very, very flexible as far as being able to secure things. It's cheap, it's easy to use, and it offers a lot of wide arrays to tie a knot, and you can also tailor the knot to whatever situation you are in. Also with rope, it's easy to tailor that as well to fit whatever application you need it for. You can use the same size rope on a big box and a small box. All just depends on what knot you use. The square knot, the knot we're going to be able to tie today, is a very ancient knot actually. The Greeks were the first people who recorded using it back in the 4th century. They called it the Hercules knot. The British, who dominated the seas from about 1500 to 1900 up until World War II, they used the knot extensively too to tie up their sails. They called it the reef knot. Today, it's commonly used to bind things, and it's also used to tie two pieces of rope together. However, this application isn't very recommended because if you tie two pieces of rope with different diameters with a square knot, it will naturally become unstable. And one of the last things you want for a knot is for it to become unstable and loosen under pressure. So another prime user of square knots are the Boy Scouts of America. They use it for their neckerchiefs, and it becomes a very prime piece of their lore and advertising. The US Navy and a lot of other navies in the world also use the square knot. It's very historical in that manner. It's derived primarily from the British. All of these sailors in the US Navy have square knots. It's used for both the dress white and the dress blue uniform. Funny story actually. A lot of sailors, they'll tie the knot once, and because they don't want to have to hassle with getting it just right, they'll just take it off and put it back on as needed. So they'll tie it in their first year in the Navy, and with any luck, they won't have to adjust it 6 years from there. However, if it does become loose and they have to untie it, some of them, because they haven't tied it in so long, they're in a bit of a tricky situation. I had a sailor who hadn't tied it for about 5 years by his own admission, and he had a dress uniform inspection, and one of the prime parts of the dress uniform is the neckerchief. If he didn't have it tied right, then he would look pretty foolish. Luckily, he came to me, and I was able to tie it for him with minimal making fun of on my part, and he came off looking just fine. So, being able to tie the square knot looks pretty complicated, right? It actually has 5 easy steps. If you search online, you can find a lot of very good diagrams for it. Here's a graphical, or here's a image that I found online. It took me about 5 minutes, and it's got a great overview of what we're about to do today. So, to start with, if you're going to tie it with a neckerchief, or if you're going to tie it to tie up sails or whatever you may need it for, it's the same basic principle, but I'm going to use it to tie a neckerchief. So you bring both sides and have them about equal. from here, you have your right side, which is going to be your long side, and you're going to bring it a palm length apart from the left side. Now, depending on how tall you are and how big you are, you might have to either bring it up if you're shorter or bring it down if you're longer. If you run through this a couple times, find out exactly how it works for you, that's usually the best bet. Each person is different, so tailor it to your own need. So bring your long side or your right side over your short side or your left side, and bring the long side up and over, like so. Right now we're on step 3, and all we do is repeat this process. Bring it up and over and tighten. So you want both sides to be about equal. If they're not equal, adjusting it's actually really simple. You just loosen it up and you can adjust as necessary. Either draw it in or loosen it up. And just tighten again and you have your score knot. If you want to check to make sure you've done it right, that's also actually really simple too. You just take it off, you turn it around, and on the back of the knot, you should have a V. I'll demonstrate that one more time. So you have your 2 equal parts. Bring your right side about a hand length or palm length down from your left side. Okay. So bring your right side or your long side over your left side. Bring it under and up, and draw it in a little bit, and repeat this process. Bring it over, under and up, and draw it in. And there you have a square knot. So with knots, they might seem very daunting at first. It's 5 steps, but if you're stuck at step 1, those 5 steps can seem pretty long. The best way to get good at this is practice. Sometimes the old adage of practice makes perfect doesn't apply to everything, but for knots, trust me, it does. Okay.